The desert night was quiet, broken only by the soft crackle of a fire. The warrior sat across from her, his eyes never leaving the woman who kept her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. To most, it was just a piece of cloth, dusty, worn, frayed at the edges. But to her, it was armor. He had found her wandering days earlier, weak from thirst, terrified of being seen. She had refused help at first, insisting she needed nothing, but her trembling body betrayed her pride. He carried her to safety anyway, tending her wounds with the steady patience of a man who had seen too much suffering. Yet every time his hand neared the cloth she held to her chest, she recoiled. Now, under the stars, he asked softly, "Why do you guard it so fiercely? It hides nothing from me." Her voice broke as she whispered, "Please, don't take the cloth off." The words struck him like an arrow, not because of what she said, but because of the pain woven into them. He had heard battle cries, the screams of dying men, the wails of widows, but her plea carried something deeper, a fear of being seen, of being known, as though the cloth shielded her from the world's cruelty. She lowered her gaze. "Beneath it, I am not whole. You will see only ruin. And once you do, your eyes will change. They always change." The warrior's heart trembled. He, too, knew what it was to feel broken. His own scars stretched across his chest and arms, silent reminders of battles fought and brothers lost. But his scars were worn like medals. Hers were carried like chains. Slowly, carefully, he leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "I do not need to see what lies beneath to know who you are. You walked through fire and lived. That is not ruin, that is strength." Tears welled in her eyes. The cloth clung tighter to her body, but the warrior made no move to take it away. Instead, he spoke as though to the fabric itself. "This cloth is not your prison. It is your banner. If you need it, hold it close, but never believe it makes you less." For the first time, she dared to meet his gaze. He wasn't looking at her with pity, nor with hunger, nor with the cold detachment of a man fulfilling duty. His eyes carried reverence, as though she were something sacred. The silence stretched, but it was no longer heavy. The firelight flickered across their faces, weaving shadows between them. She loosened her grip on the cloth just slightly, not enough to reveal what lay beneath, but enough to show trust. "You don't know what it means to carry these marks," she whispered. "I do," he answered, touching his chest where his scars lay hidden beneath leather. "We both carry them. The world carved pain into us, but it did not destroy us. That is why you are here. That is why I am here." She closed her eyes, and for the first time since they had met, her breathing steadied. He had not forced her hand, had not demanded to see what she wasn't ready to reveal. Instead, he gave her the gift of choice, the one thing her past had denied her. That night, as the fire burned low, the cloth remained where it was. Yet it no longer seemed like a wall between them. It had transformed into a symbol of her survival, her courage, and his promise to see her, not for what she hid, but for who she was. And so, in silence, a bond was born, not of unveiled beauty, but of trust. The war between their people had lasted for years, leaving rivers stained with blood and villages reduced to ashes. She was the daughter of a nobleman, raised in halls where music once echoed and silk veils fluttered in the wind. But now, all of that was gone. When her city fell, she was taken as spoil, not by a faceless soldier, but by the very man who had led the assault, a warrior feared for his ruthless heart. Her hands trembled as the women of his tribe dressed her in garments foreign to her touch. They painted her eyes, braided her hair, and placed upon her a veil of white cloth. To them, it was a wedding ceremony. To her, it was a funeral march. When night fell, she was led into his tent. The firelight flickered on the walls, painting, his shadow tall and unyielding. He sat waiting, the weight of command still heavy on his broad shoulders. She entered like a prisoner, not a bride, clutching the veil close to her face. His dark eyes studied her, not with cruelty, but with an unreadable stillness. "Sit," he said, his voice deep but not harsh. She obeyed, though her body was rigid, with fear. When his hand reached for the veil, she recoiled, clutching the cloth as if it were the last shield between her and the world. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Please, don't take the cloth off." The words silenced him. He had expected resistance, perhaps anger or curses, but not this. This desperate plea spoken with the trembling dignity of a woman stripped of everything except her own sense of self. "You think I will claim you as spoils of war," he said slowly, his hand falling away. She turned her face aside, her eyes glistening. "Isn't that why I am here? To be conquered as my city was? To be taken because you could?" Her defiance broke against her grief. She did not shout. Her voice carried the quiet resignation of someone who had lost everything, but still fought for the last piece of her soul. The warrior's heart trembled in a way the battlefield had never made it tremble. He had faced swords, arrows, and death without flinching, but her words pierced deeper than any blade. Rising, he moved away from her, pacing the tent like a man at war with himself. He had taken many things through conquest: land, cattle, glory. Yet never had he desired to take what was not freely given. Still, the traditions of his people pressed on him. A bride, even if captured, was expected to belong to her husband. At last he stopped and turned to her. His voice was steadier now, but softer than before. "You are not here to be shamed. If you choose, the cloth will remain. If you choose, no hand will touch you. What you give will be yours to give, not mine to take." Her breath caught, disbelief flickering in her eyes. She had expected violence, command, and ownership. She had not expected mercy. She lowered her gaze, tears slipping. Free. For the first time since her capture, her chest loosened enough to breathe. Slowly she nodded, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement of the strange respect he offered. The night passed in silence. He lay across the room, keeping his distance, while she remained wrapped in her veil. The cloth stayed untouched, but it no longer felt like a prison. It had become her choice, her dignity preserved not by force, but by the honor of the man she once called enemy. By dawn, something had shifted. They were still bound by war, still divided by blood. Yet within the walls of that tent, a seed had been planted. A bond not of power but of respect, fragile, uncertain, but real. And respect in time could grow into something neither of them had expected. She had always lived with the mark. From birth, it had been etched into her skin like a cruel reminder of destiny. It wasn't an ordinary birthmark. It was the symbol of an ancient prophecy whispered in her tribe. They said the child who bore, it would bring both ruin and salvation, though no one knew which path would prevail. Fearful of the curse, her people hid her away, covering the mark beneath long strips of cloth so no one would glimpse the omen. Now, in the wilderness, far from her tribe, she carried the cloth with the same desperate grip as her lifeline. The warrior who found her did not know her story. He only knew she was hunted, and that every step she took was heavy with the weight of something unsaid. That night by the campfire, his gaze lingered on her. She sat hunched, clutching the cloth tightly against her arm where the mark lay hidden. He could sense her fear, not of him, but of something larger. Finally he asked, "Why do you hide beneath it? You guard it as if it were more precious than your life." Her breath quickened. She shook her head. "Please, don't take the cloth off. You don't understand what it means." His brows furrowed, but he made no move toward her. He had seen wounds, scars, and the twisted remnants of battle, but her words carried a deeper warning. It wasn't shame she hid. It was dread. When she met his eyes, they glistened with a truth she had long carried alone. This mark is no ordinary scar. Those who see it say I am cursed, that wherever I go misfortune follows. I was hidden, locked away, treated as something to be feared. If you see it, you will look at me as they did, with terror, with hate. The warrior's chest tightened. He had fought in wars where men killed in the name of omens, where blood spilled because of superstitions spoken in shadows. He knew the cruelty of fear disguised as faith. Slowly, he moved closer, though careful not to touch her. His voice was low, steady, and rough with honesty. I do not tremble at curses. I have lived with death beside me since I first carried a blade. What can a mark do that life has not already done? But she shook her head. You don't understand. The elders said my fate is tied to another's, that the one who sees the mark will either destroy me or save me. How can you bear such? A weight, his heart stilled at her words. A prophecy, a fate entwined with his. He had never believed in such things, yet hearing her voice tremble with both fear and longing, he could not dismiss it. Reaching to his own chest, he loosened his tunic, revealing the scars that crisscrossed his body. These are my marks, he said. They were not written by gods or spirits, but by life, by choices, by survival. If your mark is a curse, then let it be mine to carry too. If it is salvation, then let me stand with it. With you. Her lips parted, her eyes wide. No one had ever spoken of her mark with such defiance of fear. The cloth trembled in her hands. For the first time, she loosened it slightly. Not enough to reveal all, but enough to show trust. He did not reach for it. He only nodded, silently swearing he would not look until she chose. His restraint shook her more than any demand could. Have that night. As the fire burned low, she realized the prophecy might not be a curse after all. Perhaps it was not the mark that bound her destiny, but the one who would walk beside her, trembling not with fear, but with a warrior's reverence for her truth. She was a healer, known for hands that could draw fever out of a child's body, or knit the torn flesh of warriors with herbs and whispered prayers. Many sought her, not only for her gift but for the calm in her eyes, a gentleness rare in a world built on blood. Yet beneath the flowing shawl she always wore, she carried a scar no salve could heal. It was not the scar of accident or war. It was the scar of betrayal. Years ago, she had trusted a man, a friend, perhaps more. She had believed his promises, his vows to protect her. But when greed shadowed his heart, he betrayed her, leaving her to an enemy's cruelty. The wound, carved into her shoulder that night, had healed, but the shame of it never left. She wrapped herself in cloth, hiding the reminder from every gaze. Then came the warrior. He stumbled into her hut one stormy night, bleeding from a gash across his ribs, his breath ragged with pain. Without hesitation, she laid him down, working swiftly with her herbs, her voice a steady anchor against the thunder outside. Days passed, and his strength returned under her care. Yet he noticed how she always drew her shawl close, even when the fire blazed hot. On the fifth night, as he sat by the fire watching her grind roots into paste, his curiosity overcame silence. You tend wounds without fear, he said softly. Why then do you hide your own? Her hand stilled. The pestle trembled against the stone bowl. She did not meet his eyes. Please. Don't take the cloth off, she whispered, her voice thin as smoke. His chest tightened. He had not moved to touch her, yet she spoke as if guarding against some threat. Slowly he set aside his cup and leaned forward. I would never force what you wish hidden, but scars are not shame. They are the story of survival. Her lips quivered with a bitter smile. You think so because you wear yours with pride. But mine was not earned in battle. It was carved in betrayal. I trusted, and I was deceived. What mark could be uglier than one left by false love? The warrior's heart trembled. He had seen many wounds, yet the invisible ones always cut deepest. He thought of his own brothers, some lost to war, others to greed. He too had known betrayal's sting. I have been carved by betrayal too, he said. Not on my skin, but on my soul. Those wounds do not fade, but they do not make us lesser. They make us stronger if we dare to face them. Her eyes glistened, the weight of memory pulling tears she had long buried. She clutched the cloth tighter, as though it held together the fragments of who she once was. Yet his words reached into the quiet ache she thought no one could touch. Carefully, he placed his hand over his own scarred chest. If I could, I would show you every wound I carry. Not to burden you, but so you would know you are not alone. Whatever betrayal carved you, it did not destroy you. You are here. You heal. That is greater strength than any warrior's blade. Silence fell, but it was not heavy. She lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes at last. For the first time, she saw not pity there, but recognition, like two souls who had walked through fire and found each other in the ashes. She did not loosen the cloth that night. The scar remained hidden, but something else shifted. The belief that it made her unworthy. In his eyes, she was not ruined by betrayal. She was reborn by survival. And though the cloth stayed, her heart no longer trembled with shame, but with the possibility of trust. The desert winds howled across the barren plains, carrying dust and whispers of loss. She walked among them draped in a long black veil, her body hidden in the folds of mourning. To her people, the veil meant respect for the dead. To her, it was armor, a barrier between her shattered heart and the world's gaze. Her husband had been slain in battle, his blood spilled on the same sands that still clung to her sandals. She had buried him with her own hands, her tears soaking the earth that claimed him. Since then, the veil had not left her face. It shielded her grief from curious stares, kept her dignity intact, while her soul broke silently beneath it. When raiders descended upon her caravan, chaos erupted. Men cut down, women scattered, children stolen. She had been seized too, dragged by rough hands, until another figure appeared from the horizon like a storm-given flesh, a warrior. His bow sang, his blade struck, and the raiders fell one by one until silence reigned. Breathless, she found herself under his protection. He was fierce, his eyes steady as steel, yet when they turned to her, they softened, as if he saw not just a widow, but a wounded bird trembling in its nest. For days, he traveled with her, guiding her across wastelands and through danger. He spoke. Little, but his presence was steady, a shield against the world. Yet each night, as they sat by the fire, he looked at the black veil with questions unsaid. On the 7th night, he finally broke the silence. You guard the veil as though it holds your very soul. Why hide so fiercely from one who seeks no harm? Her fingers clutched the fabric, pressing it closer. Her voice was faint, but heavy with ache. Please, don't take the cloth off. If you do, you will see a face that no longer belongs to life, only to death. This veil is my vow. Beneath it, I am not a woman. You will only see a widow. The warrior's heart trembled. He had seen death many times, but never carried so heavily in the living. Her words struck him with a weight greater than any enemy's blow. Slowly, he shifted closer, though careful not to touch her veil. His voice was low, reverent. I will not lift it, nor ask you to. Grief is not something to be stripped away. It must be carried until it softens. But hear me. You are more than a widow. You are the fire that still walks when ashes have fallen cold. Her breath hitched. No one had spoken to her like that since the burial. She had been pitied, mourned for, treated as something broken, but not seen, not honored. The veil quivered with her trembling hands. For a moment, she considered pulling it aside, showing him the face she had hidden from the world. But her heart was not ready. Not yet. He did not press her. Instead, he simply laid his sword across his lap and said, "I will guard you as you guard your veil, not as chains, but as choice. When the day comes that you wish to set it down, you will. Until then, I will walk beside it." In the silence that followed, she felt something unfamiliar flicker within her chest. Not love, not yet, but the first fragile thread of trust, woven not by demands, but by patience. The black veil remained that night, but it no longer felt like an unyielding shroud. It was still her mourning, still her vow, but in the presence of a warrior's steady heart, it had also become a bridge between loss and the faint, daring possibility of life beyond it. The tribe's fires burned, high, casting strange shadows across the desert night. Drums pounded like a heartbeat of the earth, steady and unrelenting. In the center of the gathering stood a young woman draped in sacred cloth, her body wrapped from shoulders to ankles in a veil embroidered with the symbols of her people. Tonight, she was to be offered to the gods. The elders said the drought came because the gods were angry, and only through sacrifice could the skies be softened. The chosen girl would be bound in cloth, untouched and unseen, carried to the sacred cliffs, where the winds howled like spirits. There, the cloth would be removed, and with it, her life. She stood trembling, her eyes downcast, lips whispering silent prayers. Around her chants rose, swelling into a roar. But her heart was not ready to die. Beneath the cloth, her chest heaved, with silent terror. Watching from the crowd was a warrior, one who had always loved her from afar. He had grown with her, fought to protect her people, and yet never spoken his heart. Now, as he saw her standing there, prepared to be given to death, something inside him broke. When the elders raised their hands to signal the final step, he pushed forward, his voice cutting through the chants. "No!" The crowd stilled, stunned, by his defiance. The elders glared, their voices like thunder. "You dare interrupt the will of the gods!" He strode toward her, every step defying the weight of tradition. His eyes locked on hers, and for the first time, she lifted her gaze from the ground. Fear shone there, but also something else. Hope, faint and fragile. He reached for the cloth, intending to free her, to tear away the binding that condemned her. But before his hand could touch, her trembling voice broke the air. "Please, don't take the cloth off." His heart froze. Her words were not what he expected. She was begging him not to save her, or so it seemed. She leaned close, her whisper urgent. "If you take it off here, before them, the gods will strike us both. I will be seen as defiled, and you will be cursed. You cannot fight tradition so openly." His hand fell away, trembling. For a warrior who feared no blade, no enemy, this was a different kind of terror. The helplessness of seeing love caught in the snare of faith. The elders shouted for him to step back, calling him reckless, unworthy of their god's favor. The crowd stirred, some with anger, some with awe, but he did not move away from her. Instead, he bent his head, his voice steady, though his heart shook. "Then I will not tear it, but I will not let them take you either." He turned to the elders, his hand gripping the hilt of his blade. "If the gods demand blood, then let it be mine. If they demand sacrifice, I will walk to the cliffs in her place." The crowd gasped, the chants faltered. No one had ever offered such defiance. The young woman's eyes widened with tears, her heart pounding beneath the sacred cloth. For the first time, she felt the possibility of life beyond fear. The elders argued, The people murmured. The drums ceased. In the silence, the warrior stood like a storm, refusing to bow. He had not torn the cloth, had not broken her plea, but with his vow he had broken the chains of tradition itself. That night, beneath the watchful stars, the ritual ended not with her death, but with the first crack in the old order. The cloth remained, but no longer as a prison. It was now the fragile fabric of a rebellion born from love. The battle had ended hours ago, leaving the plains littered with the bodies of the fallen. Smoke curled from burning wagons, and the cries of the defeated faded into silence. Among the captives was a young woman, her clothes torn, her hair matted, with dust. Yet she clutched a strip of cloth around her body with desperate strength, wrapping it across her chest and shoulders, as though it were the last shred of herself she still owned. The victors dragged prisoners into the camp, binding them for judgment. She was shoved into a corner, trembling but unbroken. When the guard assigned to her approached, she braced herself for the worst. He was a warrior, broad-shouldered, scarred from many battles. His gaze was steady, but not cruel. He crouched beside her, his voice low. "You're wounded. Let me see." She shook her head violently, clutching the cloth tighter. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling but firm. "Please, don't take the cloth off." He paused, surprised by the sharpness of her plea. His eyes softened, but he did not reach again. Instead, he sat back on his heels, studying her with the patience of a man who had seen both pride and despair in captives before. "Why guard it so fiercely?" he asked gently. "It is only cloth." Her eyes flashed, fierce despite the fear in them. "It is not only cloth. It is the last piece of my dignity. They have taken everything, my home, my family, my freedom. This is mine. If you strip it away, then I am nothing." Her words struck him like a blade to the heart. He had seen women broken, forced to bow, stripped of choice until their eyes held nothing but emptiness. But here she was, tattered, trembling, yet still fighting with the last thread of her being. His warrior's heart trembled. He could have forced her. Many would have. It was expected, even accepted, in the harsh cruelty of war. But something inside him rebelled. He could not bring himself to crush what little she still clung to. Slowly, he set his weapon aside, laying it on the ground as though to show he meant no harm. "Then keep it," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "It is yours. No hand will take it from you, not even mine." Her breath caught. She had expected violence, command, humiliation. She had not expected mercy. For a long moment she stared at him, unsure if his words were truth or trick. But when he rose and turned his back to guard her rather than loom over her, she felt something shift. The cloth remained, but so did a sliver of hope she thought long dead. In the days that followed, he treated her not as spoils but as a human being. He brought her food, shielded her from the eyes of crueler men, and spoke to her with respect. Slowly, the trembling in her hands lessened. Slowly, the cloth no longer felt like a shield of desperation, but a reminder of the dignity she still carried, and of the warrior who had chosen to honor it. One night, as the firelight flickered between them, she whispered, "Why do you protect me? You owe me nothing." He looked into the flames, his jaw tight. "Because once, someone showed me mercy when I had none left to claim. They gave me back my dignity. Now, I give the same to you." She turned away, her eyes filling with tears she did not let fall. She still held the cloth close, but for the first time, it was not out of fear. It was out of strength. And in the quiet bond between captive and warrior, dignity became the foundation of something that could not be conquered. The night was still. The desert stars scattered like shards of silver across a velvet sky. He sat by the fire, sharpening his blade, but his eyes kept drifting to her. She sat a few feet away, wrapped in a simple cloth across her chest, her shoulders hunched as though the weight of the world pressed down on them. They had been lovers, once, secret, stolen moments beneath the moonlight, when his warrior's duties faded and her laughter softened the hard edges of his soul. To him, she was freedom in a world bound by war. But now, something stood between them, something she kept hidden beneath the cloth she clutched so tightly. He had noticed it weeks ago, the way she would not let the cloth slip even when heat pressed heavy in the day, the way her hand always strayed to it protectively, as if guarding a secret. Tonight, when the firelight danced and shadows fell long, he finally spoke. "Why do you guard it so?" His voice was steady, but inside, unease gnawed at him. "You once let me see all of you. Why hide now?" Her breath caught, her fingers clutching the cloth tighter. Fear flashed in her eyes before she could mask it. "Please, don't take the cloth off," she whispered, her voice trembling like a reed in the wind. His chest tightened. It was not shame he saw in her eyes. It was fear, not of him, but of what he might discover. "What lies beneath?" he asked quietly. She lowered her gaze, unable to meet his eyes. "A chain," she murmured. "Not of iron, but of promise." Her voice cracked as she went on. "Beneath this cloth is a necklace, one that binds me to another. A vow my family forced upon me. If you see it, you will know the truth. That I am promised to someone who is not you." The words struck him harder than any enemy's blade. His hand stilled on his weapon, his breath heavy with the weight of betrayal, not from her, but from fate itself. For a long moment, silence pressed between them. The fire popped, sending sparks into the air, but neither moved. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough with restrained pain. "Why didn't you tell me?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Because you are the only man I ever chose. The vow they forced upon me is a chain I cannot break. If you saw the necklace, you would see only betrayal in my eyes. And I could not bear to lose the way you look at me." His heart trembled, torn between anger and love, between the desire to rip away the cloth and the need to honor her plea. He wanted to fight the unseen man who claimed her, to tear apart the chains of family and promise. But more than that, he wanted to protect the fragile trust she still gave him. Slowly, he set aside his blade and moved closer, though careful not to touch the cloth she guarded. His voice softened. "I do not need to see it to know the truth. Whatever chain they placed on you, it cannot erase what we share. Your heart speaks louder than any vow." She looked at him then, her tears glistening in the firelight. His words, wrapped around her like another kind of cloth, not one that bound, but one that protected. The necklace remained hidden that night, the chain still unbroken. Yet the bond between them endured, forged not by freedom, but by love's defiance against chains unseen. In his warrior's heart, he knew this secret would be the greatest battle he would ever face, not on the battlefield, but within the fragile thread of love that bound them both. The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the faint rustle of fabric as she tightened the cloth around her body. Her hands trembled, but she pulled the edges close, wrapping it securely across her chest and waist as though her very life depended on it. She had been captured at dusk, dragged into the warrior's camp with other survivors. Dust streaked her face, fear burned in her eyes, but unlike the others, she did not cry or beg. She only clung to the bundle hidden beneath, the folds of cloth shielding it with desperate strength. The warrior assigned to guard her approached cautiously. He had seen captives clutch weapons, treasures, even charms of faith, but this woman held her cloth as though it contained something far more precious. He crouched before her, his voice low but commanding. "What do you hide?" Show me. Her body stiffened, her arms tightening protectively around the bundle, her lips quivered, her voice breaking. Please, don't take the cloth off. His brows drew together. She was terrified, but not for herself. Her eyes darted to the cloth, then back to him, pleading. He reached forward, thinking she might conceal a blade or something dangerous, but as his hand brushed the edge, a sound stopped him cold, a faint cry. His eyes widened. He leaned closer, and there it was again, the fragile whimper of a child. Her secret was revealed not by force, but by the voice of the life she protected. She wept softly, rocking the hidden bundle. He is all I have left. They killed his father. They burned our home. If they find out he's here, they will take him from me. Or worse. The warrior's chest tightened. He had seen mothers torn from their children, infants left to die in the ashes of conquest. War did not spare the innocent. Yet here she was, fighting with nothing but a strip of cloth to protect the life of a child. His heart trembled. Slowly, he withdrew his hand, raising it in surrender. Keep him hidden, he murmured. No one will take him from you while I stand guard. Her tearful eyes widened, disbelief flickering across her face. You would protect us, even against your own people? He nodded once, firm and unyielding. A warrior's honor is not measured by the enemies he slays, but by the innocent he shields. Let them call me traitor if they wish. I will not see a child perish for the sins of war. Her grip on the cloth loosened slightly, enough for him to glimpse the small face nestled against her heart. The infant stirred, his tiny hand pressing against the fabric as though reaching for the world beyond it. The warrior's breath caught. In that fragile life, he saw more than innocence. He saw hope, something purer than blood or conquest could ever claim. For nights after, he guarded them closely. When others grew suspicious, he turned them away with sharp words or quiet threats. By the fire, he brought her food and water, and though she never fully unwrapped the cloth, she let him glimpse the child's sleeping face now and then. Each time his heart trembled anew. He was a man of war, his hands stained with blood, yet beside the woman and her child, he felt something unfamiliar. Redemption. The cloth never fully left her, but it changed. No longer just a shield, it became a symbol of her courage, her refusal to surrender what little life she had left. And in protecting it, the warrior discovered a strength that no battlefield had ever given him. Together, they carried the fragile secret, bound not by chains of war, but by the quiet promise that as long as his sword was sharp and his heart steady, the cloth and the child it protected would remain untouched. Dawn broke slowly across the camp, painting the horizon in shades of gold and fire. The warrior stood at the edge of the encampment, his hand resting on the hilt of his blade, his eyes scanning the distance. Behind him, within the shadows of the tents, she sat wrapped in the same strip of cloth, guarding her child, her dignity, and the last piece of her shattered world. For days he had stood between her and the cruelty of others. He had fought whispers from his own brothers in arms, endured accusations of weakness, even risked punishment from his chief. All because of a woman who clutched her cloth as though it were life itself, and a child whose cry had awakened something. Long buried in him, he was a warrior, raised to obey, trained to conquer. Yet in protecting them, he discovered a truth no warlord had ever taught him, that strength was not in domination, but in mercy. That morning, the council demanded judgment. Captives would be divided, some sold, some bartered, some taken as spoils. The woman was called forward, her child stirred beneath the cloth, a faint whimper rising in the hushed air. Murmurs rippled through the gathered warriors. One of the elders sneered. She hides weakness. Strip her, and see what she clutches so fiercely. Her heart pounded, her knees trembling. She clutched the cloth tighter, whispering, "Please, don't take the cloth off." The warrior stepped forward before any hand. could touch her. His voice rang with defiance, steady as the steel at his side. "She is under my protection." The council turned to him, faces dark with disbelief. "You would claim a captive as your own? Against our laws? Against our ways?" He met their eyes, unflinching. "I claim not a captive, but a life. The woman and her child are mine to protect, and I will draw my blade against any man who dares defile that cloth." Gasps filled the circle. To defy the council was to court death. Yet he stood tall, every muscle taut with resolve. The elder snarled, "You betray your people for the sake of a woman?" The warrior's voice softened, but his words carried like thunder. "I do not betray my people, I redeem them. What honor lies in stripping dignity from the broken? What strength lies in crushing what is already lost? If we are warriors, let us be guardians, not butchers. If we are men, let us protect, not destroy." Silence followed, heavy and unyielding. The council muttered, torn between outrage and reluctant respect. At last, the chief spoke. His eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of something deeper. Perhaps shame, perhaps admiration. "Very well. The woman and her child are yours. But know this, you carry the burden of their fate. Should they bring weakness upon us, it will be your blood that pays." The warrior bowed his head, not in submission, but in solemn acceptance. "So be it." He turned, moving to her side. Her hands shook as she looked up at him, disbelief shimmering in her tear-filled eyes. Slowly, she loosened the cloth just enough for him to see the child nestled against her heart. "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk everything for us?" He reached out, brushing his hand gently across the cloth but not tearing it away. "Because once I believed my life was only blood and battle, but you, and the child you protect, have shown me that true strength lies in saving, not destroying, in honoring what others would strip away." Her tears spilled then, not of fear, but of release. She lowered her forehead to his chest, the child pressed safely between them. For the first time in years, the warrior felt peace. Not the hollow silence of victory, but the profound stillness of redemption. The cloth remained wrapped around her, but it no longer symbolized fear. It was dignity, love, and hope, all bound in the promise of a warrior's trembling heart. And in choosing mercy over conquest, he found the one battle worth winning, the redemption of his own soul.